Thank you for joining us on this very important special edition of INFOWARS Nightly News. I want to thank David Ortiz and Linda West for the news portion of the transmission. We're going to be interspersing a lot of really big news in the next 30 minutes with the one, the only, Gerald Celente, the top trends forecaster. We're going to be looking at Obama appeals against court ruling that strikes down the NDAA Constitution killing system. Even though he says he's against the NDAA, he helped write it and then pushed for its passage and then signed it, but he's still against it. We're going to be looking at that. We're going to be looking at the takeover by the federal government of the cybersecurity and the internet. We now have a leak, confirmed leak of the executive order by Obama being passed around to media heads, the total takeover of the web. Folks, this is a serious tyranny we're entering. Now, Gerald Celente, of course, has had many best-selling books. He's predicted many of the things that have unfolded. You can find out more about his Trends Journal on the website we're going to be giving you here in a moment. But he has been calling the Tea Party before it materialized, the collapse of the euro, the riots in Europe, years and years before. And he said a year and a half ago, he said, when Bernanke says he's not going to have QE3, you watch, they've got to do it because we'll implode if they don't. And we'll have inflation and maybe hyperinflation if they do. And so that is the path that central banks always take. And remember, they promised no QE3. Then they said, okay, you're demanding it maybe a little. Now they've said QE unlimited. And we have our article here at Infowars.com today that I wrote, new banker bailout disguised as QE3. $85 billion. The media's saying $40 billion. That's just part of it. $40 billion a month to go buy private derivatives from the banks. So it's really a banker bailout, a direct tax. But total, it's $85 billion a month, and we have the press release from the private Federal Reserve, and he's going to break down exactly what this means, the mechanics of it, and what it's really doing, and how it ties into the whole LIBOR scandal and how these banks are all working in concert. And then we're going to pick his brain about, now that he's been accurate in predicting this when they promised they wouldn't, what the aftermath will mean and what the time frame is. Max Kaiser, who's also got a really good head on his shoulders and worked with George Soros' son as a top stockbroker, he has done something, said something I've never heard him say. He said by next April there will be a giant total collapse, whatever that means. He's on next week to break it down. But that's my word on this. We're going to get Gerald Celente's take on it all, the head of the Trends Research Institute. Gerald, thank you for joining us on short notice. Well, you've got the floor. Tell us what this means, and do you agree with my analysis that it's just another transfer of wealth to the kleptocrats?
You nailed it, Alex, in your introduction. This is nothing more than a bailout, another bailout to the too bigs to fail. That's where all the money is going. It's the same scheme around the world. They make it appear, you read the headlines, and here's the phony headlines. You ready for this one? This is coming from the Wall Street Journal. Fed acts to fix jobs market. Isn't that nice? They're going to fix the jobs market. Oh yeah, just like they fixed it before. How much did they pump into the system? Well, depending on whose numbers you're looking at, when you go back to 2008, beginning, of course, with the Bush programs, with TARP, we're talking about $23 trillion. Oh, and what's the job market doing? Son of a gun. Didn't Obama say when he pushed through the stimulus in 2009, that by 2010, we're going to see 7.2 unemployment, and it's going to go down from there. Hey, what are we at? 8.1. And why is it only 8.1? Because they don't add the people that drop out. So as you well know, when you look at people like John Williams' shadow stats, we're looking at 22%. And just before I get back into the QE list, the reason why this depression looks different than the other one is that you don't see people lining up on the streets in bread lines because they have a new scam. It's called food stamps. That's right. give them food stamps, shut them up, and get them out of the movie. And that's why people can't see the real pain. So when we're looking at this quantitative easing scheme, we have to understand that when they talk about a global economy, it is indeed a global economy in every sense. I have been saying for the last several months that I would put my reputation on the line that Bernanke was going to push through quantitative easing before Election Day. You don't have to be a trend forecaster to figure this one out. All you have to do is look back a little bit. Alan Greenspan did the same thing for George Bush the First, but he did it a little too late. And then Clinton squeaked in, and also because Perot grabbed 19% of the vote away from Bush. So they do it all the time. It's the criminal operation. And you made it 100% clear. The money is only going to the Goldman Sachs gang, the Merrill Lynch mob, the J.P. Morgan Chase criminals. You know, all of those guys out there that have been fined in the tens or not hundreds of millions of dollars for doing their dirty deals and then never having to admit nor deny that we did any wrongdoing. And the wonderful Obama that all the liberals love under his Attorney General Holder, who used to work for one of the premier white-collar crime syndicate law firms. They haven't brought anybody up on charges. So now you go overseas. This past week on Wednesday, the German Supreme Court. You have to put a photo of the German Supreme Court up, Alex. These little cats in these red little uniforms with these cute little red hats. These little wimpy SOBs. They just violated the German Constitution. 38,000 Germans had signed on to this. That to find the European Stability Mechanism, which is white shoe boy language, to steal the money from the taxpayers, deposit it directly into the banks, and give it to the hedge funds, the brokerages, the investors, and the bankers that made bad bets at the tune of 700 billion euros, and pay back all the bad bets they made. But because you're a member of the White Shoe Boy Club, we're going to give you interest. So they violated their constitution. They even admitted they did it for economic purposes. And then on September 5th, as I was saying, Mario Draghi, the head of the European Central Bank. For those who don't know who Mario Draghi is, he was the vice chairman of the Goldman Sachs gang European division. Yes, the Goldman Sachs gang that cooked the books to bring the Greeks into the Eurozone. That Mario Draghi. He announced, just like this, you said this endless QE, he announced they're going to buy up all of those worthless Italian, Spanish, Portuguese, Irish, Greek bonds, nonstop. All we're seeing here, and you could throw China into this loop as well, it's all connected. They are printing nonstop counterfeit digital money to give to their pals in the banks and the hedge funds so they could keep the scam going.
All right,
I'm not making this up.
No. I mean, you're not there, Gerald. And just to interject, the magnitude of this, I played the clip on the radio today. Ron Paul on television said we should, quote, be panicking right now, but instead we have this mass Stockholm syndrome or this learned helplessness. I guess the word could be normalcy bias. Quote, countries should be in panic over Fed's decision, zero hedge. INFOWARS.com, he said that one on CNN. And Ron Paul's never talked like that. The fact that they're not just doing QE3, but it's unlimited looting, and then it it comes as inflation for the general public. It devalues the purchasing power. They're buying 1.4 billion bullets, giant black armored vehicles, checkpoints. The military is preparing for civil unrest worldwide. And I saw what you're talking about. Barroso over in the EU, he said, hey, we need a total federal state run by the banks over these countries. So they're capturing us by getting our governments that are their operatives to sign on to their fraudulent paper. Then they have their prostitute media, the term you coined, tell us that it's our debt, and then they're raising taxes to pay it to them. My God, they're going to go all the way here, Gerald. So that's my question to you. How do they think they're going to get away with this? Because when they say unlimited and they're going to buy all the derivatives that these criminals created and spend $85 billion a month just here in the U.S. giving it to them, I mean, what's next? Are they going to demand our daughters?
It's one banking syndicate. It's what Rothschild had said. They would make it so complicated that people wouldn't understand it until they lost everything, essentially, and were put under the control of one bank. Here, this is a quote. Now, this isn't a left-wing, subversive newspaper. This is the front page story last week out of the Financial Times. The Financial Times. Here's the headline. Draghi helps out Obama campaign. Barack Obama's chance of re-election as U.S. president rose on Thursday, and the words that did it were not his, but Mario Draghi's. Long before Mr. Obama stood up to accept the Democratic nomination in Charlotte, North Carolina, the head of the European Central Bank had sketched out a new plan to buy the bonds of the troubled Eurozone countries. That will not move the polls. It will not move a single vote. But Mr. Draghi has lowered the gravest of risks to Mr. Obama's pre-election meltdown, fear of the pre-election meltdown fear of the Eurozone that would have blown up banks, pulverized Wall Street, and routed a fragile U.S. economy back into recession. They all know what the deal is. It's right here in black and white. It's from the Financial Times. They know that the system is collapsing. They're going to do everything they can to prop it up, and they're doing it. What does it mean? Not only inflation, and again, you know, I do Trends in the News features as part of the subscription to the Trends Journal each day. Last week, I announced on Trends in the News I was buying gold again. I had forecasted that gold prices would begin to spike. They've gone up probably about $80, $90 since I said that. Again, you can see where this is going. They're printing this counterfeit money, this digital money not worth the paper it's not printed on, devaluing everything else, forcing commodity prices higher, and here's the one that no one ever talks about anymore, hardly. In the old days, when I was a young boy, they used to have a thing that they used to promote in this country that made it seem like it was a good thing to do for wise people. Savings. Oh, you remember that quaint word, savings. You work and you put a little money away, you work and you put a little money away, and you put it in the banks. And you know what they would do with it? They would give you interest on it. Yes! Back in the old days, you would put money in the bank and they would give you interest on it. Interest that would be ahead of inflation most of the times. Now what do? They give you nothing. They take your money. They hardly give you any interest rates. And you know why? Because America's public enemy number one, Osama bin Bernanke, has pledged and has kept doing the same dirty deal, keeping interest rates near zero. They say they're going to keep them near zero or at zero until 2015. That means everybody out there that used to, especially the elderly, that used to put money away and build a nest egg, they got a goose egg. They got zip, nada, nothing. And what they're also doing by doing this is they're forcing people that do want to get a little return on their money to play their criminal operation games like investing in the stock market.
And let me stop you right there. And then Gerald Celente, who's been in gold for 30 plus years and very successful, you have a private account in another company. MF Global comes along, takes control of it, takes your 6 figures, doesn't give it back. Corzine, who advises the president, former head of the same gang, Goldman Sachs U.S., he's the Don of this area. He sits there and says, I didn't know about it. It comes out he did know about it, and they just announced last week they're not going to do anything to him. So that's my question. The signal has been sent that they can rob anything. They are taking general police, turning them into SWAT teams. They are openly preparing to arrest people and put them in re-education camps. So I guess it is confirmed, like you're issued last quarter. Next train to Auschwitz, they are going the pure tyranny route. But here's the question. Break down from your great acumen and gravitas and looking into the future on this, but now it's becoming pretty clear. I mean, you were getting called pessimist porn 4 years ago in the New York Times. Now here it is. They're going to keep telling everybody everything's wonderful while they dig in, while they move offshore, while they get armed guards. But clearly people are losing confidence in the system. So what are they planning to do? How bad will it get? What's the time frame?
All right. What they're planning to do is making headline news. It was 9/11, 11 years later. With what's going, I've said this from the beginning, when they first started talking about recovery. We did a trend alert on it back in 2008 and 2000.
You said when the economy goes down, they go to war.
You got it. No recovery cover-up, and they're going to take us to war when all else fails. Can't you hear the war drums beating? And that's what they're going to do. Look at the headlines today. What was it? University of North Dakota, Texas, Valparaiso. The fear and hysteria are already vibrating through the media. Go back, and I remember it like it was yesterday. I'll never forget back in August of 2011. You go back and you look at George W. Bush's popularity rating right after he got elected. You look at how many people were so disgusted with him. And then you look how it changed after 9/11. They're doing the same thing now. They're taking us to war. And as you well know, that war drum, you think it goes away, and then it keeps coming back with Israel talking about attacking Iran. And then you look at the news today. Alex, how many, and by the way, this has nothing to do with that movie about, Muhammad. That's like saying that World War I began, little boys and girls, when the Archduke Ferdinand was assassinated at Sarajevo. This movie is only one match in a matchbox of volatile situations that's going to light
Well,
the
let's use
fuse.
a World War II analogy. I mean, all the forces are lining up. It's being prepared. They've sent the fleets to menace the Chinese to keep, investing and going along with the white shoe boys have. They're encircling Russia. They've got proxy wars using al-Qaeda in Libya and Syria. The Russians have pointed it out. I'm not siding with the Russians, but they're not the ones looting my country. And the white shoe boys really think they're going to push Russia and now even China around. These are guys that make 40-to-1 bets and then just take your bank account. So, I mean, I have to look at this and say, as Ron Paul said, we better panic. I agree with you. They are definitely...
Better panic. This is real. This is real. Pick up the papers. Look at your site. Look at all of them. Tunisia, Yemen, Sudan, Somalia, Algeria, Bangladesh, Lebanon. Name the country. I mean, you could see it right in front of everybody's face. It is all exploding in front of us.
And now this CIA-produced video showing, you know, Muhammad, the prophet, murdering women and stuff, you know, with horses. I mean, just designed to incite radical elements. I mean, this is order out of chaos. This is insanity.
And here's the reality, as I see it. You know, I talk about buying gold and investing and this and that. If the United States or Israel goes to war with Iran, I've said this many times, those things aren't going to be worth anything because life is going to be so miserable. You know how they say generals keep fighting the last war? There's a reason for it. Because they can't win the one they're fighting, and they have no clue on how to fight the next one. This is going to be a very different war. This is going to be wars of weapons of mass destruction. It's going to be wars of polluted aquifers and suitcase-sized nuclear weapons. It's going to be the worst horror that science fiction could make up. And we already see the technology. It's in place. They're using it on us. Whether it's drones watching us, surveillance, all of the technology is there to wage a war of weapons of mass destruction. No, it's not an atom bomb with ICBMs. It's not tanks rolling across. It's not jets. It's a different war. And they're taking us to it. The same people that took us to Vietnam, that took us to Iraq, that took us to Afghanistan, and before that took us to to the Korean War, that lost every war, are now taking us to the first great war of the 21st century. The timeline is on time. Go back. The crash of 1929, the Great Depression, currency wars, trade wars, World War, the Panic of '08, the Great Depression. It's you know what the numbers are in Spain. They're about 40% unemployment. They're saying 25. Same in Greece, same in Portugal, same in Ireland. And you look around, Italy officially is over 10%. France over 10%. The United States, as John Williams points out, shadow stats, 22%. You can see it. The depression is here. The currency wars are on. And now you're hearing Mittens Romney and others talking about trade wars. The next is World War. What are people waiting for?
Man, you're absolutely right. And we've been so close to the problem. The dumbed-down sheeple who just want to watch their sitcoms and party, they're starting to wake up a little bit. But we're almost on the opposite end. We've been so close to knowing this by researching history and trying to be informed. Yourself, myself, so many others, Ron Paul, Webster Tarpley, Dr. Paul Craig Roberts, that we're almost like the sheeple in a way. But I'm getting chills right now because we've been so close to it, we're almost expecting it and ready for it. But then I have the realization that this is real. I mean, this is really happening. And then you talk about the generals fighting the last war. The Joint Chiefs, even Dempsey, who's a warmonger. This is like 3 Joint Chiefs of Staff chairmen in a row saying, don't blame us if they go to war. We don't want a war. You got Mossad heads resigning over it. You've got anybody who knows anything like Colonel Schaefer saying we don't want this. There's a reason real war fighters who usually love a new war do not want to enter this, because you're right. It's asymmetrical, it's insane, and they also realize it's globalist bankers who want to sit back from their yachts and offshore islands and play the West off against the East so they can consolidate power and get a police state out of it. People realize this is such a hell war that they're creating, and it's got Russia looming, and the white shoe boys who are so arrogant and chutzpah, bravada, hubris-filled are probably, I mean, there's a lot of experts, a lot of top brass I've talked to on and off air. They say this could go thermonuclear. I mean, this is going to get out of hand. This is going to make World War II look like a cakewalk. So I hope all the good old boys that talk about glass parking lotting all the Arabs, I hope they're ready for $20 a gallon gas if that happens. I hope they're ready for bioweapons in the streets. I hope they're ready for cities burning when the welfare people riot, because this isn't a game. You know, Homeland Security thinks it's cute. They're running ads about get ready for a zombie apocalypse as an archetype type of the public. It's like Satan's running this or something, Gerald. I mean, you couldn't come up with a more diabolical geopolitical plan than what these Harvard, Wall Street scumbag, crazy people have done. Because you know what? I have been freaking out, like Ron Paul says, for years. I knew it was coming. But now it's not over the hill. It's not down the street. It's 6 inches in front of our nose, and it stinks like a pile of dead corpses. And they're telling me it's pumpkin pie. They're telling me it's key lime pie to eat it. I mean, how far does this damn insanity have to go?
And you're right. It's exactly what it is. It's right in front of our noses. You know, I look at these people that are in charge. It's not only what they say, it's who says it. And how could anybody believe them? Just by looking at them. You know what I look at these people? It's like they're like an anti-human race. They're not human. They're anti-human. All of their actions, again, they pollute our water. They poison our food. They destroy our minds. They wreak havoc on the earth. This isn't human. They're anti-human. All of their actions are anti-human. You know, they say Obama, you know, he's from Kenya, he's from here. I think this cat's from Galaxy 9. And right behind him is Mittens. And all of them.
Who's even weirder?
I'm telling you, they're doing anti-human deeds. These are not things that conscious people who care about the human race do. You know, you were mentioning about all of these people and the destruction that they bring us. Think of Dwight D. Eisenhower, 5-star general, supreme commander of the Allied forces, 2-term president, and a Republican. He tells us that the military-industrial complex is taking over the nation. It will rob us of the genius of our scientists, the sweat of the laborers, and the future of the children. Now think about this, Alex. What was the major war that Eisenhower got us into? How about none? How about it was Eisenhower who ended the Korean War? No, he wasn't like Obama with his sleeves rolled up. Didn't that cat ever work, man? He's always out on the campaign trail. Or Romney, who's been running forever, since 2006 and before. And Eisenhower also said that anyone that seeks the office is either crazy or an egomaniac. And there you have it. You have crazy and egomaniac. You have fraud and fraudster. They're right in front of our eyes.
Max Kaiser has a good analogy, and I remember seeing it in the press at the time. Some of the stockbrokers, because of the crisis of the towers, stocks were going up and down wildly, and they were making millions of dollars in the towers, and they stayed there as the buildings collapsed just to make money. And that's what the globalists are doing. I liken them to cancer, and cancer is programmed to take it all. Because I was making the point that, you know, to Max Kaiser, that cancer, if it had a consciousness, would think it was winning. It's taken over, it reprograms, nothing can stop it. And it's actually destroying the host. And he said, yeah, it's programmed to take it all. And these people really are cancer. That's why you say they're anti-human. All of us make mistakes. None of us are perfect. But these people actually, well, it's basic criminology. It's like a lot of criminals rob banks, not just for money. It's fun. And for them, it's fun. I mean, I was reading about Hitler and also watching some of the films. He would go out to the fronts, the Russian front and others, and for days he would stay up drinking coffee and eating pastries and taking speed to watch through big telescopes cities being bombed and burning buildings. And he loved World War I. He loved the dead bodies and the rotten dead people in the trenches. They said, man, he was like a fish to water to that. The black uniforms, the skulls. Well, look at our police. Look at the systems we've got. It's all that same black uniforms, ring wraith outfits, evil. And Stalin liked murder and death as well. These people are sick. These people, it's beautiful to them. It's beautiful what they're creating. And they are cancer. These people are cancer.
As I said, they're members of the anti-human race. And when people ask me, when are things going to change? And I keep saying it over and over again. Nothing is going to change until the individual changes. And when enough individuals change, they don't accept this kind of behavior from the people that want to lead them. I've made this very clear. I am not going to vote for president in this election. I refuse to vote for a lesser of two evils. I don't hang out with lesser of two evils. I don't go out with them. I don't do business with them. I'll be damned if I'm going to vote for one to run my life and run my country. And then people say, well, why don't you put a write-in ballot or vote for so-and-so? No, because then that shows, they use the numbers to show that you're promoting their system and you put you down as somebody that voted. I will no longer be a part of this criminality. And again, only speaking for myself, you know my motto, think for yourself. I will not be part of this corrupt crime family that they like to call the Republicans and the Democrats.
Well said.
But you're better off calling them the Bananos or the Gambinos.
Absolutely. Tell people where your motto of trendsjournal.com, trendsresearch.com came from. I mean, what would your dad think? What would your dad think today, before you tell the story? What was your dad, if your dad was alive today, seeing all this happen? If my grandfather was alive today, seeing what happened, I think they would think they'd woken up on another planet. But what would your dad say about this today?
Well, he would say, you know, I'm glad I'm getting old, and I don't have to live in this place anymore because I can see where it's going. When I was a little boy, you know, my mother used to want to get me the hell out of the house. I was such a troublemaker. So on Saturdays, you know, my father would go out for business, take me along with him, and I'd be shitting my mouth off. And he'd look over at me in an Italian, he'd say to me when I'm running my mouth, he'd say, Papagallo, parrot, stop repeating what everybody else is saying and think for yourself. And I heard that a couple of times, and I respected my father as I did my aunts and uncles and the elders, and I never wanted to make a fool of myself. So before I opened my mouth, number one, I knew I had to know what I was talking about. I had to have the facts. And the second one was I didn't want to repeat what everybody else was saying because that was the popular thing. You know, and another funny thing, I never rebelled. You know, my generation rebelled. I looked up to my elders. I have a whole wall over here of all my ancestors because I knew that I didn't know and they knew. Did they know everything? No. But everything they knew that they taught me. And that's the difference, by the way, of what's going on now. Young people have no reference point. They don't remember when America used to have, here's an arcane thought, Alex, there used to be a thing called hardware stores. Yeah, before Home Depot, before Lowe's. They were all over the place. There was a thing called an entrepreneur. I love Mittens Romney gets out there and he brags about creating staples. Oh, wonderful. You put all those stationery stores that used to be in every neighborhood out of business, and now you can take home $62.50 a week after you work in Staples and all your taxes and everything else comes out. People have no reference point when there was style and quality in this country, when we really built magnificent cities that are now going into the dust. And as I say, the only way I see America coming back is by going back. Going back to a time when there was courage and dignity, when there was respect and integrity and passion. You can see it in the buildings that are rotting in Detroit and in Cincinnati. You can see it when America led the world in infrastructure, and now we have trains that are speeding into the 20th century, let alone the 21st. You can see it by the dignity of our president. When you had a man like Eisenhower and not a little calfone like Obama being lifted up by a pizza man with his arms out like this. Could you imagine Eisenhower doing that? Could you imagine our presidents having their wives come out at the conventions to say how great my guy is and what a wonderful daddy he is? Look what this country's devolved into. The only way we're going to get ahead, I believe, is by having a renaissance, and that means going back to American quality.
Well, all of that is great, and I agree with you, but now they have thrown another curveball, unlimited quantitative easing, which it'd be bad enough if they really gave it to the banks and said loan, but as you know, in the last 5 years, the banks won't loan anything. They hoard the money. The only place you've got really big inflation is in the luxury items because they're giving themselves the money. That's their way to stop real hyperinflation, is just to make sure we don't get any of it. But if you're going to have inflation, might as well have it be into the economy at first and get some benefit up against the bad. But instead, it's this weirdness where only the elite shops and the luxury stuff, you know, gets more expensive and they're making money hand over fist. But all the little restaurants I used to go to, all the places, they're all closed, they're all boarded up. Austin's one of the better off cities in the country, and it's bad. Everybody I know, including executives, doctors, you name it, they're making a lot less. People are moving in. Families are having to move in together. Everybody's got 2, 3 service jobs. It's getting worse and worse and worse and worse and worse and worse by the minute, and the health care plan is really written by the insurance companies to let government and insurance companies take over care and make you buy it. I mean, it's so hellish. Evil has been turned loose. And this happens in a lot of cultures. So my question to you is, time frames. You've been absolutely, I'm not kissing your butt, it's true, on target with everything you've talked about. You know, they're like, oh, things didn't collapse, Celente. Well, they're saying the collapse we're seeing isn't a collapse. They're playing games. They're messing with the numbers. But now you said, I guarantee you they're going to do the QE. They've done it. So tell us what's coming next now that it's coming more into focus. And you've obviously got some of the lines a little bit more crisp. Clearly, they're trying to hype up the Arabs with this fake video. Clearly, they've turned al-Qaeda loose that they put in all these countries. Clearly, they're putting out all these fake bomb threats right now to get the fear going. So, yes, I see the preparatory fear-mongering that I saw before 9/11, that you saw before 9/11. We can see them getting ready. So what does that mean? Staged terror attacks before the election? TSA on the streets rolling out? I know 6 months ago I confirmed nationwide every city had its TSA checkpoint kits and groups set up. They're all waiting. I mean, clearly this has all been premeditated. They've got the hammer risen over us. How do you see it dropping? What tips can you give people once it drops? How bad will it get?
I believe that just as Mario Draghi and the Financial Times reported, they're going to hold this together until the elections financially on the economic end. All of this stimulus won't do anything, as you clearly point out, other than enrich the very rich. That's all it does. It didn't do anything before. Why should it work now? The same thing over in Europe. And you look what's going on in China as well, Brazil. You go around the world. It's all unraveling. I believe they're going to hold the economy together until after the election. And we'll probably start seeing the unwinding happening around March. I also believe that there's a high probability that we're not going to be thinking about the economy come election day, as the geopolitical trends are now shaping up. This is not going to stop. Look, Alex, Terror Tuesdays, where Obama signs off on how many drones they're going to send in to wipe out people. The Afghan war that keeps getting worse. Look at the slaughters. Every day you're seeing slaughters going on through Iraq. Africa is unraveling continually. The strikers in South Africa, Mali unraveling. Oh, by the way, that's happening as a result of the takedown of Gaddafi. Syria turning into a hellish civil war. Libya going in and never having ended the civil war. That ramping up. More destabilization in Europe. So as I see it, I believe that the economic collapse is more likely to happen around March or April, as Max Kaiser points out, but more of a geopolitical crisis that is going to take people's minds off the minor issues of the presidential reality show.
No, I totally agree, because World War I, World War II, but there's also famous letters from 600, 700 years ago during 30 years, 100-year wars between the French and the British, who were actually the French Norman that had already conquered, and they would write letters. These are in the National Archives in England. People can pull them up. Oh, cousin, I'm having troubles at home. Can we have a war? Just to get everybody killing each other, but two royal families that are literally, you couldn't even tell the princes apart, kind of like the czars and the Brits when they were first cousins. The two kings looked identical. That was just 100 years ago or less. Well, and they would just have a war to kill off their young men and give them something to fight with. I mean, this is so sick. So you're right. As you said a year ago, or it was over a year ago, you said the first great war of the 21st century. That's where this leads. And so once they've pumped everything up, posed as saviors, stolen the money that they claim was to get the economy going, they'll just have a whole bunch of giant wars and some terror attacks and start having TSA grope our wives and children on the side of the highway, and we'll all bow and fetch to them for keeping us safe. And we just march into pure technocratic slavery. And now they got cybersecurity executive orders. They admit shut down the web. They're talking about shutting off people that don't like them. And I guess they're going to try to come arrest us, Gerald. I mean, I guess that's it.
Yeah, well, that's why we wrote that, I guess, was it the Spring Trends Journal? All aboard. Next train to Auschwitz. Kiss those calories goodbye. And, it wasn't as though the people didn't know what was going on. The people didn't stand up and take action, just like they're not taking it now. You mark my words, Alex. You're going to see El Presidente of los Estados Unidos. I say that because the joint's turned into a banana republic, where the cops arrest a little kid in Pennsylvania yesterday, Philadelphia, a 2-year-old kid, 2 years old, for peeing on a lamppost. This is what they do in third world nations. They crack down on the little people. So what you're going to see is when El Presidente hits the stage, like he did when he started the Libyan war, with that, gravitas is, I'm the commander-in-chief, and this is why we're doing what we have to do. The yellow ribbons come out, the flags go up, everybody salutes, and then they go to war. They do it all the time, and they're going to do it again. False flag or real, to me, it's in the cards.
And you can see the preparation for collapse of society. What are solutions to counteract this?
Again, I keep saying this. It goes back to the human spirit. It's what you're doing, what I'm doing, with the people that are working with you and me, the people that are listening to you and to me that want to make a positive difference. I'm up here in Kingston, New York. Uptown, they call it. It's a great little place. All the people, virtually, and I say all of the people are in it with each other. Every shop owner here, every restaurant, everyone wants to see everyone doing well. We have farmers markets. We're all trying to help each other. That's where it begins. And we have to break away from these chains. I keep saying it. Begin with breaking the chains. And like I say, if you think Olive Garden's Italian food, you're out of your mind. Go to your local place. I won't go to a Dunkin' Donuts. I go to Hudson Valley Coffee Shop. I won't go and buy anything I don't have to buy in a chain store that I could buy locally. That doesn't mean I don't buy everything. I have to buy some things. And the other thing, most importantly, it's about getting in touch with yourself. I have this line that I use. I'm alone in this world. I was married for 23 years. I have no children. I'm divorced a long time, too. Everybody I love is dead. No big deal. You just look at life differently. And for me, again, only speaking for myself, to me, hell is taking that last breath of life and knowing that you BS'd yourself and you weren't the person you claimed to be. So what I suggest is that everyone look at themselves and saying, is this the way you want to trip out of here? Are you okay with yourself? If not, what can you do to leave this planet on a happy note, a satisfied note, and a note of respect and dignity for yourself? And I believe when more people do that, they won't take the crap from these two-bit politicians and a bunch of suck-up bureaucrats and other psychopaths and sociopaths. They'll demand greatness.
You're right. And here's an example. Let the big crooks get away with it. A cop sees a 2-year-old unzip their pants and start peeing on a lamppost. Come on, cops. Anybody who's had kids or been around knows when kids are 2 years old, I've got 3 of them. They, you know, I mean, I've had daughters when they were 2. My son, when he was 3, at the beach. And until you tell them no, they're just like little animals. They start peeing up against a lamppost. That's what kids do right after the time you potty train them. And the fact that a cop would write somebody a ticket for that shows a total disconnect for reality. When I was at Bilderberg this year, and they didn't want us to be able to get around it, they'd gone and harassed everybody and said, don't let them park. They'd gone in our hotel and said, is Alex giving you any problems trying to find something? And I told the cops, you know, shame on you, the head ones, and I had some of the others apologize for it. But the last day, we're trying to walk down a side street on the sidewalk across a little road. It's not marked. You can't walk across it because it's a red curb if you can't. And we're trying to walk across it, and the cops come and block it and say, we're going to arrest you if you walk across there. And I sat there and I said, you go ahead and arrest us then. This has been going on for about 10 minutes. And the national media was there. The Guardian wrote about this. And I said, do you want your kids growing up in a country where citizens can't walk across this entrance here to the Marriott on a side street? You know this isn't marked. And I said, it's not illegal for me to walk right across here and go over by the hotel, you know, on the city sidewalk. I said, can I walk? And I said, if you do this, you'll enforce anything that's illegal. And I said, do you want your children to live like this in this country? And he pointed across the street and he said, you see that mobile unit? My boss is watching me on a camera right now and I'll get in trouble. And I said, so you're going to follow orders? You'll do anything to follow orders? And he said, no, fine. Go ahead. You guys can walk across the street. And everybody cheered. And I turned back and I said, that's what we have to fight for in America, is that we can walk on the sidewalk past, you know, over an entrance where you're supposed to be able to walk. And again, it's not like people were even coming in and out of that entrance. It's that's how far we've come. And the Guardian wrote about a victory for liberty, that we could walk across the street. And it just shows how ridiculous this is, that that people that work for the system are enforcing their own enslavement. People have got to just start saying, we're not going to be part of this, and start saying no.
Exactly. And it's what I said earlier. When you see an economy in decline like ours, and you see all the numbers coming out, they just came out with some new data that hardly made the news about how many young people born in poverty never make it out. And we're at the bottom of the list of all of the so-called developed nations. Dr. Paul Craig Roberts did a piece recently. He's showing that, no, our median income isn't below 1989 levels. It's below 1967 levels. The gap between the rich and the poor is the widest in the United States than any of the industrialized nations. Half the people in this country are dying with no money in the bank. This is the behavior of the police in third world and declining nations. Like when you saw what was going on in Egypt and how much they hate the police. That's what happens in declining societies. They hate the police. They'll arrest a 2-year-old, give a 2-year-old kid's parents a citation. Come on, for the kid peeing, you're going to waste your time. But John the Slime Corzine, who robs segregated accounts like mine of $1.6 billion that, hey, man, I can't find it. I had it here a little while ago. Oh, and by the way, the Attorney General, the Attorney General, Obama's Attorney General, has not brought one Wall Street head to roll. The same firm that I mentioned, the white shoe firm he used to work for, one of the premier white shoe boys firms that is one of the premier white-collar crime criminal lawyer groups. They also represent MF Global, Yes, the one that John Corzine also, brought
And the
down.
heads of the different SECs and things, they were all worked for Goldman Sachs or directly under Corzine. I mean, this is a criminal group, and I guess they're going to take it all the way to the wall. I notice now they're starting little private cities for themselves where we're all chased by drones and combat troops and are slaves, and they're all back to the castles. I mean, they're going back to the castles.
Yeah, that's what's going on. And again, the whole game is rigged. You don't have a shot at making it straight. By the way, when you're going to start seeing crime really, really start to escalate, they say that the fish rots from the head down. And everybody out there sees what's going on. And we're just riffing now about Corzine and all these other guys that get off with no time and all their money. So everybody else sees it. They say, hey, if they're doing it, why shouldn't I? That's the way of the world. You have to be a sucker to play it straight. So now what you're seeing, again, when you add up all the data, as you well know, what is it now? 20% of the children are living in poverty? How many of them are going to get out? Very few. They come from nothing, they have nothing, and they'll do anything to get something. So you can see how this whole cycle of violence and crime keeps building on itself.
Which is legalized slavery, because they get the kids for petty things or even being late to class, put them in juvenile hall, they get beat up, they get inducted into a gang. Now they get an education in crime, or they become cops, and the cycle continues. It's legalized slavery. I got two final points, and I want to plug the Journal here because it's so invaluable for folks out there. But guns of pot users to be confiscated. Federal court ruled they can do asset forfeiture seizure for any substance abuse, including prescription drugs, alcohol, or marijuana. So now the ATF will decide if you're a substance abuser, no judge, no jury, no 68 Gun Control Act, you're not a felon, and take your guns. So now the pot users are going to have their guns taken. I mean, the magnitude of all of this just absolutely makes your head spin when you realize that they are just trying to bring us to a road warrior level society. Obama said he'd get our guns one way or another. I mean, what's your take on that?
Well, the take is very simple. We began this by talking about the economy. I mentioned about how young people have no reference point when there used to be small farms, small businesses, small agriculture, when there were a lot of people that were in the communications business and it wasn't all closed up. It's a takeover. We're talking about the central banks in Europe tying in with the central banks in the United States. Oh, and by the way, that European Supreme Court ruling, again with those cats in the red hats and those little red robes, they also took power out of the Bundestag, the German government, and transferred it into Brussels. So now you're going to have two major central banks working with each other, the Brussels central banks, and you mentioned Brasso before, about how they're going to start taking all the power away from the European nations and centralizing it. So what it all adds up to, and what we're only talking now about the details, Alex, of fascism, the merger of corporate and state powers. It's been a takeover. The corporations run the game. There was no such thing when I was a young guy of hedge funds and private equity groups owning corporations.
They've put their people in every government. You look at Brazil, you look at African countries, New Zealand, it's always Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan. They've got the regulators, they got the judges. I mean, I've never seen, and I've studied history deeply, in modern history, such a massive unification of crooks who are just literally running the police and everything else. God help us. Gerald, Celente, we've got to help ourselves. God helps those that help themselves, as we know. Trust in God, but row away from the rocks. The Bedouins saying, trust in God, but tie up your camel. I mean, I guess, Hunter S. Thompson kind of ripped off that and said, trust in God, pray to God, but row away from the rocks. People need to support PrisonPlanet.tv. They need to subscribe. They need to share their username and passcode with up to 6 people. They need to spread the word by word of mouth, because information and awareness and resistance can stop this. And they need to support or the organic farms and the small shops. And I go to secondhand shops for clothes. You can find even better stuff for nothing, because it is about the quality. But like, getting back to you, the Trends Journal, world class. I mean, I can't learn much from, quite a few people, but I learned something eagerly from that when you were nice enough to send us the PDF of it even before the physical magazine comes out. The weekly alerts, all of it at trendsjournal.com. Tell people, because you never plug yourself, how they can subscribe, how they can sign up, and even if they can hear you here for free coming on once a month or something, hey, support somebody. Because look, it turns out $500 million, and I already knew this, but it was now in the news, of stimulus money went to MSNBC to push their anti-freedom crap, to not hire anybody, but to give bonuses to all those propagandists. They also got another $500 million a few years ago in the bailout, the companies that own NBC. I mean, it's so classic. These are literally paid mercenary mouthpieces in mainstream media. You and I, in our operations, we don't have that. And so people need to understand, if they're watching out there on the internet, you need to support this information.
Yeah, the more people that support people like you, myself, and others that are putting out the word, the greater the chances are that we're going to move into a more positive future. If they keep putting their money in with the people that are raping them, guess what? They're going to continue to get raped. So the more that comes in, the more we can put out. It's as simple as that. And with the Trends Journal, which our website is trendsjournal.com, we know that people are having a difficult time, and we offer a discount request. There's a little form there. Just fill it out, nothing personal. We try to make the Trends Journal available to everyone. And the reason we do it is because the purpose of the Trends Journal, it's not about me, it's about you. It's about helping you prepare, helping you survive, helping you thrive, so that you could plan for the future. And if you see the future coming, then you know how to navigate it. And I have to say that, we've been around since 32 years, and our track record is second to none. And we're very fearful of what's going to go on in the future, and we need you to help us make a better future and a better present. By the way, I hate these politicians that say, I want to make the world better for our children and our children's children. How about making it better right now? And that's what the Trends Journal is really about, making it better now.
In closing here, Gerald, we'll let you go because I know you're a busy man, and I appreciate the hour you just spent with us. Very gracious. It's very simple. I've been covering Bilderberg in person now for 7 years, but I've been covering it for 17 years on air. And it's just one of the big crime syndicate meetings. They tried to deny it existed, but then myself and others forced it out in the open, Jim Tucker and others. But from his moles, and now some of the moles we have, and staff we talk to before they throw us out, and the Bilderberg group is so mean to them, doesn't give them tips, yells at them for no reason, that they always end up giving us data after. That while they're serving them coffee and drinks and things at these board meetings, like a UN meeting, they talk about those protesters. I want to shut the economy off quicker so that they don't have the money to come protest us. And they talk about getting rid of the complex free economies, local economies, to control us. They're feudalists. They're oligarchs. They constantly talk about, and they have debates. Well, if we raise gas prices too much, they'll riot and throw us out. But we want to raise it enough to impoverish them. I mean, they actually talk, because we always go to the hotels beforehand, 2 days before, and they're like, listen, we'll get fired, we'll get arrested. No way, bud, don't you? And like, just take our card, just call us. And they're like, it's all true. We're not allowed to look them in the eyes. They told us we're scum. Here's some documents. They were saying they want to bankrupt everyone. Those people are evil. I thought you were a kook. I mean, and it's the same whether it's in England or France or the U.S. or Canada. It's always the same. They're like, You know, those men are evil. I mean, Switzerland with our reporters over there. We did not believe it. They are evil. Warn everyone, evil. I mean, this is what we're talking about. They want to bankrupt us. So we've got to buy organic. We've got to buy local. We've got to support alternative media now and vote with our money before they totally shut everything down. Because once they bring us into poverty, these third world countries could be wealthy. Their elites don't want people that are uppity. They want them as slaves. They want us as sharecroppers. I know I'm ranting, but final comments on that. People need to subscribe to prisonplanet.tv and spread the word, and they need to subscribe to trendsjournal.com. They need, just like you in your speech said, support your local farmers market and shops, people really better support us because we're facing, you know, possible, you know, prison or being killed. I'm not going to lie here, folks. This is real.
No, it's real. All you have to do is look what's going on around the world. It's going to play near a neighborhood near you. And you, as you well know, who are the first people they eliminate? The intellectuals, the people that are showing what's going on. They hate us because we're exposing the fraud. And as I said, you know, when you're talking about they're evil, to me, man, they're members of the anti-human race. There's a big galaxy out there. Look up into the sky. I don't know where these cats are coming from, but boy, they don't have the heart or soul or anybody that I know.
Well, I instinctively, they call it God-fearing, but just if I even think about doing something bad or see somebody do something bad to somebody who doesn't have it coming to them, I just have this horrible feeling like, hey, the universe doesn't like that. And it's so strong, and I just can't imagine. I watch these people, and they just enjoy hurting people for no reason, and I'm just like, man, I'm glad I'm not them. I mean, you're right, they are screwed up.
You know, I watched all of the both conventions. Now, I have to because of my job. And I could not believe this show that they put on. One lie after another, every cheap applause line you could believe. And then I have to tell you, you know, they put on a great show. It's part Super Bowl halftime and mega church revival meeting. And the sheep will buy it. And so when you see the level of manipulation and weigh that against the emptiness of what they say and all of the broken promises, what do people expect? No one would associate with these kind of people in business or in life or in relationships, yet we're handing over our lives to them. So yes, you know, yeah, we need... The more that we get, the more that we could give. I know how much you give. I know how much you're out there. I don't know how hard you work, but I only could imagine because I know what I have to do to stay, you know, on top of the news and ahead of the trends. It's nonstop. So the more people that help us, the more it helps everybody.
Well, and I think what we're getting down to it is we're all in this together. I mean, I'll go back 10 years ago, sitting there watching the globalists engage in divide and conquer. And at some levels, you know, not that you even dislike people, but they're taught to dislike you. So you go, well, fine, I dislike you too. I at a very deep level understand now that that is the enemy completely because that's how the globalists win. Humanity is in this together. The ruling elite are scientifically playing us off against each other. They're cold-blooded. They are malfunctioning. They're screwed up people. You're right. They're not on Team Humanity.
No, they're anti-human. They're the anti-human race. Oh, and one more thing. Turn on any TV station. Go to any cable station you want. Where do you see the news like you deliver the news on your TV show? Nowhere, no place, no how.
Because you've got a gang of crooks that are anti-human because they're against everything good and decent because it flies in the face. And I mean, that was just my point. I think overall what you've said here is we're facing a real time of test. If people think things are bad now, just get ready. And we better get ourselves together. And we better reach out to humanity. And we better support each other. And we better support local businesses and local ideas. And we better just get involved everywhere because we have... See, here's the problem. When you get an evil system going, the most corrupt end up gravitating to the top, and then there's always somebody more evil who kicks them out, and it's almost like an accelerated evolution of evil, or a race to the bottom, until you get the most crazy, control freak, murdering, death-loving people in. And that's the point we've reached. Well, Gerald Celente, I think this was the most powerful talk we've ever had, and I think that's because we are now coming down to the line. Over in the Middle East, Africa, Latin America, Asia, they're already dying by the millions of starvation every year. 15 million a year adults, about 15 million children, 30 million. They're already being bombed by drones. They're already being, Western governments funding the next group to attack them. They're already living in huts with mosquitoes biting them all day. They're already watching their kids starve to death. And I just feel sorry for all the dumb yuppies out there because you have no idea what you're getting ready to face if this goes all the way. Gerald Celente, final comment.
Well, yeah, you really said it, because, when you're seeing what's going on over there, it's going to happen here. You don't have to have a stretch of the imagination to figure it out. As we're talking, anybody could go on the computer and do your own homework and add up the embassies that are being attacked, add up the ones that are being burned, add up all of the violence going on. It's going to happen here, as I said, and when it does, false flag or real, bam, the hammer's going to come down, the gates are going to go up, and freedom is going to be lost. It's going to be the end of the United States of America. It's happening in front of us. This is not a stretch of the imagination. We saw what happened with 9/11. We get a couple of more like that, even smaller, whoop, the clamps come on, the curtain goes down, and it's going to be hell to live in this country.
Yeah, I liken it to the Vichy French, who were collaborators with Hitler. That's why most of their military stood down, because they bought off the generals. Everybody serving this are Vichy French, basically. And I mean, I know you were just over in Europe, and we published last month in our little newspaper magazine your article. What was the headline? It was like Thinking of Hitler, or
Haunted by Hitler.
Haunted by Hitler.
Yeah, how could the Germans, these great people, they had to be at the top of civilization in the 30s, in Western civilization, let a two-bit freak like him destroy their country. The Italians, Mussolini, a cartoon character. Right over here, folks. Turn on the presidential reality show. You want to see a bunch of two-bit freaks? They're there for you. Hey, how about that cat over there in California? The guy running for Congress. Oh, Alex, if you get an abortion, your cancer rate goes up. Or the guy in Missouri. Hey, ladies, if you get raped, don't worry about it. It's an unimmaculate conception. It'll never happen. These people are out of their minds, and they're running your lives.
Gerald Celente, trendsresearch.com, trendsjournal.com. Thank you so much. A very powerful radio broadcast, and I hope to air some excerpts of this on the Sunday transmission, 4 to 6 p.m. Thank you so much, Gerald.
Hey, thank you, Alex, for all you're doing.
Man, wow. Well, there goes Gerald Celente.